Welcome to Unit 4. The topic I'd like to discuss in Unit 4 is another task that the security leader is counted upon to undertake from time to time, and that is as a security and compliance advisor. So periodically, you'll be asked to comment on the state of security and compliance. So the question is, who might these requests come from? And on what do you really advise? For that matter, what is the state of security? And what topics of security and compliance would you cover? And what degree of detail does the security leader provide? So the security leader may report on the state of security and compliance on a periodic basis. Now that may be very regular, such as quarterly or annually, or it may be really periodic. From time to time, somebody will come to you and ask for you to describe the state of the security operations that you have. So to understand what we're talking about, you really have to establish two concepts. First, what does it mean when we say state of security and compliance, and how often is periodic? Well, according to Merriam-Webster, the state of something is a mode or condition of being, such as a state of readiness, or a condition of the mind or temperament, such as a state of nervousness, or a stage in the physical being of something. So I like to think of state from a security perspective as incorporating all three of these definitions. First, let's look at mode of condition or being, such as a state of readiness. So this is the easiest to understand with respect to security. We talk about setting up a security or compliance model in earlier parts of the course. So you'd want to look at things like the gap analysis. What is it that you're missing in your security framework or your compliance framework? And then, of course, your gap mitigation. How am I going to fix the things which are identified as gaps in my analysis? And then a continual review of that readiness of security or the compliance program itself. So we provide these kind of readiness reports from a number of different publications, requests, etc. So for instance, 10Ks and 8Ks, there'll be security comments. The board of directors often ask for the state of security. And again, as part of their job as fiduciaries of the company, they must understand whether or not the company's security and compliance obligations are being met. So they will come to you at least annually, and I would suggest meeting with the board of directors quarterly at the least, to be able to provide that condition and or state of security. Insurance brokers, such as your general liability insurance broker or the E&O brokers, will certainly want to meet with you to understand the state of your security so they can price your insurance policies. Auditors and assessors, there's an annual audit by the IT security auditors, and certainly they'll want to know what the elements of security are in place, where there might be gaps. And if you have obligations under a certain regulation or standard, such as the PCI DSS, those assessors will be in at least annually to be able to provide their statement on the state of your security. And of course, clients sometimes will ask you for your state of security. This may often be in the form of a questionnaire, or you may agree to have a client come out and do an on-site audit. So, and some of the contracts that we produced, we would always have clients who would request the right to audit, and we would grant that in many cases. If we look at security as a condition of the mind or temperament, we might be asked to provide an assessment on the temperament of the security community. So, for instance, if you think about an event that might take place, for instance, WannaCry, and certainly somebody on the board or in senior management or a manager or even another employee may ask, how is security really approaching this particular problem? And so we look at not only the physical things that we do, but the question of whether or not the event that we're looking at implicitly or explicitly requires that we turn our attention 100% to that event. So there may be, for instance, a malicious attack out in the wild that may not be a very high risk to us. So it certainly would not be something that we would want to drop everything and go and try to fix that particular problem. So we're generally looking for the state of an external condition, situation, or event, though it's not inconceivable that some internal event could also generate a question of our assessment of the security of that particular event. So it's, for instance, somebody may be creating a new type of product, and they would like our feeling on how that of the security of that product and anything that they would need to do extra to make it secure. An example of this is, how aggressive are malicious actors pushing ransomware attacks this month? Well, we may look at it one month and see that ransomware is really hitting hard on the landscape of security. So we may do a special security awareness session that month. The next month, it may not be as high a risk, and we may not do anything special on it. Stage in the physical being of something. If you think of this as sort of like project management, we're undergoing a number of security and compliance projects at any point in time in the operation of a security or compliance group. So each of those projects has a state of completion or a stage in which it is operating. So we think of these as 50% done or 75% done, etc. But it may also be how the completed products or completed stages really influence the security that we'll have after the project is done. So for instance, we may say we've got the most important elements of security implemented already in this project, and therefore what we're doing now is the user interface or something less impactful on security necessarily, but certainly an important aspect of the project. And an example here is a network segmentation project. As you segment your network, the more segmentation you do, the stronger you may be building your security model. So who might be asking us for these comments? Well, certainly for 10Ks or 8Ks, which we'll talk about in the next section, this might be senior management or the board of directors asking you directly to provide written comments on the state of our security. Well, the board of directors is actually just the board asking you to provide them a current state of security so they'll have a feel for how the security of the company is being managed. And as I said, the insurance brokers could be cyber insurance brokers, the E&O brokers, general liability brokers, etc. The assessors and the auditors will be almost guaranteed in any security operation. Like I said, you'll have your annual IT security auditors, and there you'll provide a very detailed assessment of where the security model sits at that point in time. They'll ask you very specific questions, either in a questionnaire form or in person, and they will document it very heavily. Same thing with the compliance assessors. their audits may not be quite as heavy as an IT security auditor, but it's important to document the elements of security that are identified through those assessments, particularly any gaps which need to be mitigated rapidly. Project status certainly come from senior managers and board members. It'll also be from other team members who are coordinating their projects with yours. And in a temperament of security professionals, everyone in a company may certainly be part of that process through security awareness training, questions and answers, town halls, etc. Senior management, the board, and the clients will all be interested in understanding what the temperament of security is at any point in time. So what do you advise about? Well, that depends on the audience and the tolerance for detail. We looked at the audiences that you might be providing detail for, and each of these might have a different view of what's important to them. But more importantly, some of them may also have a different view on how much detail they'd like to get. So, for instance, boards tend to like very concise elements of security provided to them. 15, 20, 30-minute intervals, tell us what the state of security is. They have the option at any point in time, obviously, of asking questions and going into more detail, but they want very succinct presentations on the state of security. What I used to do would be provide that very succinct detail of security, but then also provide written detail in much greater depth, which the board of directors could then read through at their leisure. If they had questions, they could read through it in more detail and ask those questions, or simply read the parts of the report that were important to them. The level of detail comes with experience. I could tell you when I first started presenting my detail to the board, I really feel for the board members because it was excruciating detail. And I finally had to sit down with the general counsel, who said, listen, it's all great detail, way too long. And that's when we came up with the plan if I would do a much shorter presentation with the written details provided to the board of directors.